Welcome back, everyone. Oz here, and today I've got some r/stories about Kevin for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading you the posts, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. As a super quick further ado, Gamercept is currently doing a Christmas gift with purchase sale, so that's going to be while supplies last, so if this interests you, you know where to go. Use code Oz at checkout. Thank you! Buckle in, everyone, because over the next few days over this holiday season, we'll be going over the Kevin Big Rig saga. This is more to give me some breathing room so I have less planning to do while trying to prepare for the holidays myself, so I hope you enjoy this complete train wreck as much as I did. The Prologue. Strong Bad Jr. Kevin violates parole. A few years ago, I was a driver trainer for a large trucking company. Basically, my job was to take newly minted truck drivers and teach them how to handle themselves in the real world. Sometimes it was easy. Other times it was like teaching a fish to play tennis. One of my students, the Kevin of this story, was so dense he made a lead brick seem like a feather pillow. Not because of his driving, but because he almost got himself, and me, arrested. Here's the story. Kevin was on my truck for about 3 weeks. He wasn't the worst student I had, another Kevin has that honor, but he was far from the best. At week 2, we ended up in Salt Lake City, Utah after delivering a load. It was a slow time of year, and Salt Lake City had always been a sparse area for outgoing loads, so I expected to have to wait to leave out. Not a big deal, I needed the downtime. Kevin, from out of nowhere, started to seem anxious about something. When I ask him why he's so tense, he tells me he needs to get his license changed to his home state. He lived in Louisiana, but his license was from Iowa. The company used a loophole in Iowa state law by granting temporary residency to students to get them a license. After the license was issued, they had 30 days to get it switched to their home state. Not a major issue since management knew the drill and would get us to students' home state in plenty of time. "Dude," Kevin asked, "when can we go to Louisiana? I need to get my license changed." He asked this every day for a week, but it wasn't until we were stuck in Salt Lake City that this really seemed to bug him. "Look, I've told dispatch you need to get home. They'll work it out. Just relax." He didn't. After 3 days, we finally get to leave Salt Lake City bound for Chicago. It takes a few days and the entire trip. I can tell he's getting more and more nervous. Eventually, he can't talk about anything else except how he needs to get home. He was getting pretty annoying. We make our delivery in Chicago and get another going to Laredo, Texas. Normally, we would have gone through Houston, Texas, but this happened during the massive floods, and I knew going that way would be a bad idea. Fortunately, I found a way that would avoid the flooding and get Kevin to his hometown. Better still, we would have enough time to get him a ride to the DMV, get his license changed, and still make delivery in plenty of time. Win-win-win. And Kevin finally seemed relieved. We get to Kevin's hometown on a Sunday afternoon, and he gets ready to leave. I tell him, first thing in the morning, get your ass to the DMV, get your license taken care of, and get back here pronto so we can get going. He says okay, and leaves with his girlfriend while I enjoy some time to myself. The next morning, I give Kevin until 10 a.m. before I start getting impatient. I texted him, asking him where he was, and got no reply. I texted again. And again, no answer. I call. No answer. I tell dispatch, who's asking me when I'll get moving, that Kevin has disappeared. He was supposed to get his license changed over, but I haven't heard from him all day. Dispatch tries to call him, and they don't have any better luck. Apparently, Kevin has disappeared. By late afternoon, I start getting the feeling this little shit has bailed on me and wasted my time. This was a common occurrence for new drivers. I tell dispatch that I'll give him until the morning to reach out. If he doesn't, I'll continue on to Laredo on my own. There was still plenty of time, and dispatch agreed. Morning came. Kevin was still AWOL, and I was out of patience. I send him one more text, telling him I'm leaving without him, and head out. I drive for several hours before taking a mandatory break and check my messages. To my surprise, Kevin reached out. "Hey man, my PO found out I took a job driving and was pissed that I left Louisiana. She told me to get back as soon as possible or she would have me listed as a fugitive." I called her yesterday, Monday, but she's out of town and told me to wait till she gets back on Wednesday. I'm completely shocked. P.O. as in parole officer? Kevin, are you telling me you're on parole and leaving the state without permission? Yeah, I was in jail for selling dope. I got parole for 2 years. I didn't think it was a big deal since I was working. Dude, you violated your parole. You'll be lucky if you don't end up back in jail. Well, my parole officer said she wants to talk about it Wednesday. Yeah, I imagine so. You better get in touch with dispatch and let them know so they can work something out. I end the conversation and continue to Laredo. I deliver the load and pick up another headed to Atlanta, Georgia. Thursday, I call Kevin to find out what the deal was. He tells me that his parole officer gave him the okay to keep working. I assume you have some kind of official document that says that? I tell him. No, she didn't give me one. Then you better get one because there is no way in hell I'm leaving the state with you unless I have something from the state saying it's okay. Why? Because, dumbass, if I carry you across state lines knowing you're violating parole, that makes me an accessory to a felony. I'm not going to jail for your stupidity. Oh, okay, I'll ask her. I tell Kevin when and where to meet me. I tell him that if he disappears again, I'm not coming back to get him. He says he understands. I get to the location when I said I would, and he's nowhere to be seen. I text. No answer. By this point, my patience for this clown is completely gone. I tell dispatch I don't trust this guy's word, and I'm not taking a chance on him lying to me. I leave out again and head for Atlanta. Kevin does reach out 6 hours later and wants to know if I'll come back for him. I tell him that he has lied 3 times and acted so shady that I can't trust him to do the right thing. If he wants to finish his training, he can sort something out with management, but there's not a chance in hell that he will see me again. Fast forward a few months, I found out from dispatch that Kevin's parole officer had not given him permission to leave the state again. Apparently, I made the right call by leaving him there. Fortunately, they weren't interested in prosecuting me. I have no idea what happened to Kevin, but I imagine he did something else that was stupid and landed back in prison. As for me, I took a break from training after the whole debacle. This Kevin wasn't the only one I had during my time as a trainer, and he definitely wasn't the worst. But for dragging me into his parole violation, he's firmly in the top 10. Kevin in a Big Rig Part 2. First day, first Kevin. First of all, a big thank you to everyone who upvoted and commented on my first post in the Stories About Kevin subreddit titled Kevin Violates Parole. I can't begin to tell you how humbled and honored that people have found the tales of an old truck driver interesting. As requested, I decided to post several of these stories in a series. I've decided to call the series Kevin's in a Big Rig. And I hope you all enjoy. If you haven't read Kevin Violates Parole, I'll include the link below. And now for Kevin's in a Big Rig Part 2. First day, first Kevin. The first Kevin I encountered when I became a truck driver was by far the absolute worst. To say that he was dumb as a box of hammers would be insulting to the hammers. Even now, 6 years later, I can scarcely believe the majority of the things this guy did that ranged from, "Really, dude?" to, "Oh my god, how can you still be alive being so dumb?" The worst part is that I had to share a truck with this guy for nearly 3 months, including trying to sleep with him driving an 80,000-pound vehicle without adult supervision. Please keep that in mind as the story progresses. When I met this Kevin, I'll refer to him as FK for first Kevin, I had just completed my 6-week training period with my driver trainer after I received my CDL. The standard policy for the company was to pair 2 drivers who lived relatively close to one another so that both drivers could take home time at the same time. We typically stayed out on the roads for weeks, sometimes months at a time, working constantly. Unfortunately for me, FK was the driver that lived closest to me at the time who had no co-driver at the time. So I get paired with FK, and the first day, I could feel the stupid vibes pouring off of him. I was born and raised in the southeastern US, and even to me, calling this guy white trash would be an understatement. He bragged about his family being in the KKK, but he accepted his driver trainer, who was black. But being a new hire in bottom rung of the ladder, I shrugged it off. The first day, FK and I are paired up. We pick up a load going to the LA area. FK, thinking that because he has a whopping 2 weeks more driving experience than I do, that he should be the one to take the first shift, because I don't trust you yet. I should explain this was not his personal truck, it was owned by the company, and he was not a supervisor of any kind. I didn't care, so I rode shotgun for a bit. As soon as FK starts driving, I'm immediately grateful for the driver trainer I had. FK reminds me of my time at CDL school when I would be in a truck with 4 other students and an instructor. Student truck drivers are notorious for being clumsy behind the wheel, but they tend to find their groove while out with a trainer. First Kevin, on the other hand, thought the bouncing gear changes, excessive revving, and braking so hard that a simple 4-way stop feels like landing on an aircraft carrier. I wasn't very experienced, so I thought nothing about it. For long. We get fuel at a nearby truck stop and head west. Once we're on the interstate, I notice FK keeps picking up a spiral-bound notebook, looking at something, then putting it down. He does this every few minutes for about an hour before I ask what he's looking at. First Kevin gets a shit-eating grin on his face and hands it to me. It's the route the company sent us. You know, since we're company drivers, we have to follow the company route. Okay, so why do you keep looking at it? The next turnoff is at least 200 miles away. Yeah, but I keep forgetting. Note that FK had a perfectly good truck-specific GPS in the truck, and the route was programmed in. You programmed the GPS, right? I ask. Just follow that. It's telling you the same thing as your notes. He mumbles something about how it's so important that we follow the company route, or we get written up. And he was gonna do everything right and blah blah blah. I just let it go. So we're still going down the interstate. First Kevin driving and religiously checking his precious notebook every 5 minutes. It's around rush hour and we were in a fairly large populated area. I start seeing signs of road construction and traffic is beginning to stack up. But First Kevin is still looking at his notebook and not slowing down. Traffic is quickly becoming bumper to bumper, and Kevin still hasn't seemed to notice. It's then that I see the issue. The 2 left lanes are closed due to construction. Kevin is driving in the center left lane of a 4-lane section of interstate. The far left lane is already closed and the center left, the lane we are currently in, is about to close in less than a mile. First Kevin, still reading his notebook, drives right up to the point where the orange barrels mark the start of the lane closure. Dude, get over! I tell him and instinctively check the passenger side mirror to check for traffic. It's then that I notice the other semi, hauling ass up on our right side. First Kevin looks up, sees the barrels, and no signal, no mirror check, just merges right. Whoa, 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 whoa! I yell just as the other truck driver blows past, raring down on the horn. I briefly glimpse the other driver's face and he is pissed. Not that I blame him. First Kevin looks sheepish and starts mumbling something about idiot drivers, but at the time I'm still trying to keep from going into full-on heart attack. I stay up front until we clear the construction zone and then climb back in the bunk to get some rest. Emphasis on try. I had to drive the night shift, and I knew better than to drive without sleep. His less than expert truck handling did not help matters. A few hours later, I wake up to the sound of air brakes releasing. I hear First Kevin yelling he's out of time to drive, and I need to take over. I pull my boots on, sign in as the active driver to the truck's electronic log terminal, and settle into the driver's seat. It's at that point that I look out through the windshield and see something odd. It's dark, of course, but in the headlights I see 2 white lines converging at an angle just ahead of the truck. I look to the left, and the dim reflection of emergency flashers light up cat-eye reflectors on a white dashed center line between 2 solid white right-of-way boundary lines. It's pretty obvious First Kevin, in his lack of wisdom, had stopped the truck right at the merging point of a highway on-ramp and a major highway. Where the fuck are we, I demand? I don't know, but I ran out of hours and this was the only place I could find. That was bullshit because there was rest area 10 miles before that would have been a much better place to stop. Dude, do you have any idea how dangerous this is? Not to mention illegal? Well, I had to stop somewhere. Anyway, I gotta pee. He goes to get out of the truck. No, the fuck you don't, I say, pulling on the seatbelt, releasing the brakes and putting the truck in gear. We are not staying here a second longer. If you gotta piss, use a Coke bottle. We're out of here. I get the truck going, thanking God there was no traffic or cops at the time. While first Kevin is grumbling about having to pee in a bottle, I don't care because I'm more concerned about not causing an accident or getting a ticket because of this idiot. He can piss in his pants for all I care. He goes straight to the bunk anyway, so I don't have to listen to him. I drive the rest of the night without incident, and he takes over again early the next morning. These incidents may not seem too bad, but bear in mind, this happened in just the first day. I was with this clown for 3 months, and conditions did not improve during that time. Kevin in a Big Rig Part 3. Frozen. Backstory. The following takes place about a month after first Kevin and I were first paired up. If you've read the Part 2 of this series, then you have some idea of the kinds of Kevin-esque things first Kevin was capable of. And you'd probably be right. But what he did this time resulted in what the absolute worst night's sleep of my entire life. The closest I ever came to committing legitimate murder. By this point, I already had FK pegged for what he was, an incompetent buffoon who shouldn't be allowed near a soapbox car, let alone an 18-wheeler. But of course, in his obviously demented mind, he thought he was the absolute top dog of the trucking world. This is in spite of the dozens of times he would have to wake me up and get him out of another bad situation. However, at the time, I was more of the grin and bear it mentality because I was broke and afraid that any screw-ups or boat rocking on my part would get me fired. But that was about to change. One day, after picking up a load close to the company's home terminal, we received instructions from dispatch to relay the load in the company drop yard and take the truck sans trailer to a local dealer in town for scheduled maintenance. This was essentially a gloried oil change and lube job with a few other items on the checklist just to make sure the truck was in good shape. This was normally handled by the in-house mechanics, but because of some serious backlogs, they decided to contract it out. The plan, as relayed by dispatch, was for us to drop the loaded trailer in the yard, bobtail to the dealership for a late morning appointment, get the service done, it would take 2 hours maximum, pick it back up when finished, and continue on to the destination. Easy in, easy out. Unfortunately, first Kevin was the driver on duty during the shift in which we were supposed to arrive. But in typical Kevin fashion, he got lost because his infamous system of navigation failed again. As a result, he wasted half a day backtracking and ran out of drive time, leaving me to get us to the terminal, drop the load, and get to the dealership 15 minutes before they closed for the day. This meant that, since we missed our appointment, we would have to wait until next morning when they had an opening in the schedule. Since the opening was first thing that morning and parking at the company terminal was packed, I made the call to park the truck outside the dealership for the night. We had plenty of fuel, and there was a gas station within walking distance where we could get food. The shop told us this was fine, so that was that. This happened in around late November/early December in the Midwest. The winter had already shown signs of being bad, and snow had been falling for weeks already. The weather forecast for the night was to dip well below freezing not long after sunset. After squaring everything away with the service reps at the shop, I turned to Kevin. Look, Kevin, it's gonna get cold once the sun goes down. I'm gonna walk over to the store and grab something to eat tonight. You coming? Kevin replied, No, I got food. I'm gonna see if I can get that bunk outlet to work. For a few days, he had been complaining that one of the 12-volt outlets in the bunk section of the cab wasn't working. Apparently, it was a major issue for him, even though neither of us had any electronic device other than our cell phones, and the bunk had a total of 4 outlets. Only one didn't work. But trying to tell him that fact only made him upset and make him flex his 1 week of seniority over me. I really didn't feel like arguing, so I left him to it. I go and buy food for dinner, some snacks to have in reserve, beverages to hold me over for the night, and 2 packs of cigarettes because smoking was the only thing that could calm my nerves enough to not strangle Kevin each time he had to wake me up to help him navigate. As I'm heading back, the sun goes down, and I can see a nearby pond start to freeze. I quicken my pace so I can get back to the warm cab. As I get to the truck, I see first Kevin in the passenger seat hunched over something. I go around to the driver door and jump in. For those of you who don't know, trucks meant for long-haul operations have very thick insulation to hold in heat for a very long time. This came in handy since that truck had an idle limiting system that wouldn't allow the engine to run for long periods of time sitting at idle. If the engine was needed to maintain heating or air conditioning while parked, the driver could set a device much like a digital thermostat. You set the control for the temperature you want the cab to be, select it to either heat or cool, and the engine will start and stop to maintain the temperature much like the central unit of a house. Since the cab was well insulated, the cab of the truck could stay warm for hours. Before I left the truck to go to the store, I made sure to set the idle control system to maintain a comfortable temperature. When I got back, however, I couldn't help but notice it was colder than when I had left it. Much colder. What was strange about that was the engine was running fine. Naturally, I checked the temperature controls on the dash. They were set to full heat and full fan. And that's when it hit me. There was nothing coming from the dash vents. The blower fans were dead quiet. I looked over at first Kevin, who I just noticed is poking around with the fuse panel that was hidden behind the rear panel of the glove box. Kevin, why is the heat not working? I don't know, it stopped working when I was checking the fuses. That led me to my second question. Why are you messing with the fuse panel? I was trying to get that outlet to work. As you may know, most vehicles have 2 fuse/relay panels, one underneath the hood in the engine compartment and another inside. Trucks are the same in that regard, except they have a lot more fuses than the average passenger car. One thing that was stressed heavily during my training was that the fuse panel inside the glove box of the truck was strictly off limits. This is because if someone goes about carelessly pulling fuses looking for a bad one without first disconnecting the power, it could cause a surge through the panel and short out other circuits. Since the fuses in the glove box controlled vital circuits such as external lights, dashboard instruments, and engine controls, messing around with them could lead to major issues. Also, the dash blower motor circuit was also fused in that same panel, and first Kevin had been messing with it. It's hard to remember what I was feeling at that time. Anger, hate, panic, homicidal rage, all of the above. Oh, fuck, I exclaimed as I jump into the bunk area. I checked the thermostat. It's showing 58 degrees Fahrenheit, 14.4 degrees Celsius, when it was set to 73 degrees Fahrenheit, 22 degrees Celsius. I checked the vents in the bunk heat controls and turned them full heat and full fan, but sadly, nothing. We were in a truck with no heat in near freezing conditions. To make matters worse, the shop at which we were parked was already closed. We were in trouble. I grabbed the truck's computer and sent an urgent message to dispatch telling them that our heater isn't working and the temperature outside is dropping fast. First Kevin is still mumbling about the outlet. Will you forget about the goddamn outlet? We have no heat. Don't you understand that? He said something, but the computer signaled an incoming message. Truck 1234, you have access to your truck, so we can't get you a room. I tell dispatch again that the heater isn't working, and it's getting colder by the minute. But they said company policy meant we had to stay in the truck. We were screwed. I turned to first Kevin and say, close that fucking glove box and don't even think about opening it again. At this point, even he realized he screwed up royally. We were stuck in a cold truck for the night. Neither of us has enough money to afford a hotel room, and short of starting a bonfire inside the truck, we were in for a cold, cold night. I quickly eat my dinner and stow my food away. I then dig through all the clothes I had with me, looking for every stitch of warm clothing I had and layering up as best as I could. I ended up wearing 2 long-sleeve t-shirts, a pullover hoodie, a Carhartt jacket with 2 pairs of jeans, 2 pairs of socks, 2 heavy-duty work boots, and 2 pairs of jersey work gloves with a fleece blanket for cover. The entire night, I don't think I slept for 2 consecutive hours. Despite wearing what felt like a week's worth of clothes all at once, the cold air still permeated through. I stayed curled in the fetal position for the entire night, shivering so hard I could feel the entire truck shake. Each time my violent shivering or chattering teeth brought me out of sleep, I would look at the thermostat control. By midnight, the temperature was well below freezing, and with high winds that had come up, the truck was only getting colder. I can remember feeling disgusted that each time I woke up and not seeing sunlight. At one point, I honestly believed that I wouldn't survive the night due to hypothermia. Finally, at about 6 a.m., I woke up for the last time and decided to go outside. Not because it was any warmer, but because the gas station I went to the evening before opened at that time, and all I wanted was a little heat. I didn't wake First Kevin. Honestly, I wouldn't have cared if he was dead for the hell his stupid ass just put me through over a power outlet. I walked to the store, looking like a vagrant with withdrawal symptoms from shivering so much. When I walked into the store after that long, bitter night, I wanted to cry because the heat felt so nice. The cashier gave me a puzzled look, but saw my baseball cap that had my company's logo and let it go. I bought 2 cups of piping hot coffee and a warm breakfast. I took my time savoring every bite of it. Since the station had a dining area and wasn't busy, I really wasn't in any hurry to get back. I sat in the station for about 2 hours before I had to head back. The shop opened at 8, and I wanted to get the truck in the shop and fixed ASAP. I get a 3rd coffee for the walk back and get over to the shop just as the office is opening. First Kevin is waiting outside and sees me holding my coffee. He asks where I got it, and I pointed to the gas station. The rep opens the door, and we go inside, check in with the desk, and hand the truck key to the technician so he can get started. First Kevin, who was useless when it came to things like this, went to the lounge area. I made sure to tell the tech about the fan and asked if he could check it out. He said he would. I signed the paperwork and head to the lounge. In the lounge, First Kevin looks frustrated. He wanted coffee too and was disappointed to learn that since the shop had just opened, the office staff hadn't made any in the lounge yet. Well, walk over to the gas station and get one, I say, trying not to snicker. You know I can't walk that far. Why don't you go get me one? He asked indignantly. I should point out that First Kevin had a bad leg due to, if you can believe it, a bad car accident. I know, big shocker. At first I felt bad for him being partially disabled, but by that point, after everything I had endured because of his stupid ass, I was tempted to damage his good leg so they would be a matching set. Because I signed the truck in, that means I have to be here when it's released. Kevin gets mad. Well, why didn't you wake me up and ask me if I wanted anything? He demands, almost throwing a tantrum. It was at this point my tolerance for First Kevin glitched. This son of a bitch had put me through a living hell of no sleep, being thrown around the truck like a rag doll because of his horrible driving, having to take flack for his fuck-ups, and getting chewed out for late deliveries because he keeps getting lost. Now, he wants me to be his errand boy after nearly causing me to freeze to death? As someone once said, hell to the nah. I set my coffee on the table and raised to my full height. I had at least 1 foot and 100 pounds on him. Listen here, you sawed-off little bastard, I replied, summoning every last ounce of piss and vinegar in me that wasn't still frozen. Because of your dumbass, I barely slept all night. How the hell we're not dead of hypothermia right now, I have no idea. I have put up with your bullshit for over a month, and I'm fed up with it. You are not my supervisor. You are not my lead driver, and you do not tell me what to do. And if I ever catch you messing around with the fuse panel or anything else on that truck again, I will cut your goddamn throat! And at that moment, I meant it. Kevin muttered something, but I told him to shut up, and he obliged. After a couple of hours, the technician came and told us the truck was ready. First Kevin, still without coffee, sulked off to the truck while I dealt with the paperwork. I asked the tech about the blower fan and find out it was a blown fuse. Apparently, First Kevin pulled the fuse and the resulting arc caused the fuse to blow. Since he was an idiot and the fuse panel wasn't labeled, there was no way to know which fuse was blown. He told me to make sure that next time I needed to check the fuses to disconnect the batteries first. I laughed, signed the papers, and went back to the truck. Back in the truck, I send a message to dispatch and tell them we're ready to roll. Kevin had climbed back into the bunk, obviously still sulking. I take the first drive shift of the day so the load can once again be back on track. While I wish I could say this was the end of my misadventures with First Kevin, it is not. There's more. And yep, it gets even better, folks. Kevin in a Big Rig Part 4. First Kevin gets lost. OP gets an idea. Backstory. This story takes place a few weeks after the truck heater snafu. While I would like to say that First Kevin learned from his mistake and tried to do better, it would be more accurate to say that he merely doubled down on his brain-dead antics. In the interim, his driving skills plateaued at noob level, his navigation ability was at potato, and his superiority complex had gone from annoying to insufferable. Despite everything, I was still very much a rookie driver, a peon in a very big company, and most importantly, more broke than MC Hammer. I was afraid that doing anything to rock the boat with management would lead me to being fired, in further debt, and my truck driving career at an end. To add some perspective to my situation during this, I should mention more about the contract I had to place with the company at the time. In exchange for free training, I had agreed to work for the company for 8 months. If I quit or was terminated for any reason before that contract was fulfilled, I would be liable for over $6,000 in tuition fees. Furthermore, since the company owned the training facility at which I trained, they could refuse to release my CDL school records to any prospective employers unless they bought the contract. Since most reputable employers required proof of completion of a CDL school and were unwilling to make such an investment in a relatively inexperienced driver, I was stuck and pretty much at their mercy. This is the dark truth that many supercarriers such as Swift, Werner, and CRST will not tell you when they promise you a rewarding career and free training. In short, I was pretty much powerless. But that was about to change, and in some strange way, I have First Kevin to thank for that. The morning on which this story takes place started out like pretty much every other day for the past 2 months. First Kevin finished his shift, and me waking up to see what kind of fresh hell of a mess I had to sort out. The day before, we had picked up a load in Pennsylvania, with me doing the initial pickup. I had gotten us just across the state line into Ohio before going off duty. Just before picking up said load, I had filled the fuel tanks completely and burned maybe a fourth of the tank before going off duty. The next fuel stop was in less than 400 miles. We had more than enough fuel to get there. Again, First Kevin had ended his shift with no clue where we were. No surprise there. A quick look out of the window and we're on the shoulder of a highway. What a completely unexpected and unprecedented development. Yawn. Fine, okay, let's get this over with. By this point, I had already purchased my own truck-enabled GPS. First Kevin, apparently upset that I didn't recognize his obvious superior ability, had thrown a tantrum and demanded I no longer use his GPS because he would work out the route. Yeah, right. He gets out of the driver's seat and, like the petulant man-child he was, he took his GPS from the mount. A trick I learned from my trainer was when using a GPS was to enter the departure and destination and then add each assigned fuel stop in order as waypoints in the route. This forced the GPS to stay on the company route 90% of the time. Also, our fuel payment cards would only work at the assigned fuel stops, so it made life easier just to follow it. Having to get fuel elsewhere needed a valid reason, assistance from dispatch, and often carried a lecture about the importance of the company-assigned route. I had tried to teach this trick to First Kevin, but because he had so much more experience than I did, a full month, he felt he didn't need to listen to me. I set up my GPS and hit the current location function. This, of course, as routine, as First Kevin never had any clue where we were. I had already familiarized myself with the route and knew which highways, towns, and cities I could use to help get my bearings. This time, however, I was completely stumped. I had expected that First Kevin would have gotten us at least halfway into Illinois, but the GPS had us in some small town in Indiana. Also, it wasn't a town I had seen on either the GPS route or the paper map I routinely use to verify the GPS. Okay, that was odd. I look again at the GPS for a highway number or street name. Again, nothing it showed me made any sense. I go back to the navigation page where it showed the distance to the next checkpoint, which would have been our next fuel stop. This didn't make sense either, as it was showing close to 500 miles to go to the first fuel stop, not the second. It had to be a mistake, I think, since there was no way to be further from the fuel stop than when I went off duty. Was there? I sit in the driver's seat for about 5 minutes trying to make sense of what the GPS is telling me. I had almost convinced myself that the GPS didn't log us reaching the fuel stop and was trying to backtrack. I was about to force it to reroute to the second fuel stop when I, by chance, happened to check the fuel gauge. And my bottom jaw hit the floorboard. Where once the needle had been just above the 3/4 line, it was now showing less than 1/4 of a tank. By my estimates, that was good for about 100 miles safely. Something was very, very wrong. "Kevin, where the hell are we?" I asked, knowing it was in vain. "I don't know," he replied testily. He had been growing more indignant ever since the heater fiasco. "Did you get to the first fuel stop?" "No." "Did you get lost again?" He didn't respond right away. "I was following the company route," he finally replied proudly. "Bullshit, because we are very low on fuel and further away from the fuel stop than when you started." He looked stunned. Apparently, he hadn't realized that fact. I turn back to my GPS and take a look at the map, and everything became clear. We were way off course, about 300 miles from the interstate we were supposed to be on. I didn't know how, but we were well and truly lost. Low on fuel, in the Midwest, and well into the wintertime. Fuck my life. I decided to abandon getting back on the assigned route. Kevin had wasted his entire shift with his unplanned detour, and I didn't want to make the situation even worse. I tell the GPS to search for nearby truck stops. It takes a few moments, but the patron saint of truckers had not abandoned me. There was a Flying J truck stop less than 20 miles away. I tell the GPS to take me there and send an urgent message to dispatch. I tell them we need our fuel card unlocked for that location and we were dangerously low on fuel. To my surprise, Kevin did not like this idea. "We have to stick to the company route. If we run out of fuel, it's the company's fault." "Company route?" I scoffed. "You got us lost again. You have no idea where we are. Again! I have to spend half my day correcting your fuck-ups again! Right now, the company route doesn't mean a damn thing because I have no clue where we are! What I do know is we need fuel, and now!" Kevin starts sulking. "Well, if we get in trouble, it's on you." "Fine by me," I reply and get us going. My reasoning is that if I run out of fuel at the truck stop after requesting the fuel cards open, dispatch would have to explain why they didn't allow it. Running a semi out of fuel requires some very expensive emergency road service. However, if I run out of fuel while going down the highway, I'll have to explain to dispatch, the safety department, and the highway patrol as to why I couldn't read a fuel gauge. I voted to minimize my responsibility and at least get somewhere where it's available. The last thing I wanted to do was repeat what happened in the dealership parking lot. About a half hour later, we get to the truck stop. It's early morning, so several other truckers are already refueling, and we have to wait in line. I check the computer, and to my surprise, dispatch approved the fuel purchase, but was concerned as to how we got so far off course. I reply that I just came on duty, and first Kevin was the one who got lost again. I didn't expect anything of this, since the night shift dispatchers didn't handle things like employee discipline or service records. When the time comes, I top off the tanks, almost 150 gallons of diesel, and try to figure out what I can do to get us back on track. After driving about 5 hours, I finally get us back on course and decide to take my legally required break. As I go to put myself off duty, I notice an important message has come from dispatch. It's from my fleet manager. I'll call her FM for short. Roughly equivalent to a supervisor. "Call me ASAP," was all it said. "Oh, great," I say. I take my phone, step out of the truck, and make the call. "What are you two doing? How did you end up so far off your route? Did you follow the route we gave you? What do you mean, fleet manager? Well, Kevin says you've been ignoring the company routes. That's why you've been getting lost. That explains it. Kevin, the little weasel, sent her a text message with some made-up story. My blood started to boil. Fleet manager, first of all, I have no clue what happened. When I finished my shift yesterday afternoon, everything was fine. We were on course and had plenty of fuel. I woke up this morning on the side of a 2-lane highway in the middle of bumfuck Indiana with no clue how I got there and running on fumes. That's why I sent the message to have the fuel cards opened. Well, you two are a team, so you have to work together. I take a deep breath, fighting back the urge to launch into a verbal tirade that would surely get me fired. Fleet manager, you know what Kevin is like. Well, just figure it out. She hangs up and I have to fight the urge to throw my phone across the parking lot. A short time later, I return to the truck and make ready to head back out. Kevin is sitting in the passenger seat, his precious notebook in hand. He's trying to hide a shit-eating grin on his face, but his 1970s porn star mustache gives it away. So, he said, you gonna follow the company route? You're a company driver, so you gotta follow the company route. He then hands me his notebook, open to the page he had written down the route. I take it and throw it in the back. Listen to me, shithead. You're not my boss. You're not my trainer. I don't take orders from you. From now on, I'll drive the truck my way. You drive it yours. Unless it's an emergency, keep your cock holster mouth shut. For a moment, he looks terrified, then petulant as he goes back to the bunk. Good riddance. For the rest of the day, I go through everything that had happened over the past 2 months. When I think that after all the times I had to babysit a supposedly more experienced partner, I get blamed for everything going wrong. I just get more and more upset. But since I'm a broke, newbie driver under a hobbling contract and no support from anyone, what can I do? I need to get away from this clown, but how? If only there was some way I can prove he's fucking up. I'm just a truck driver. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't always a truck driver. Before I started driving, I was a manager at a steel mill. I was an engineer by trade, and my previous job had me dealing with safety and environmental regulations, quality control, OSHA, DOT, and my least favorite, corporate bureaucracy. Corporate cooperation. The company I was driving for was a corporation with a hierarchy of increasingly incompetent managers, VPs, and directors who will be slow to take responsibility, but first to demand someone else do. However, I happen to know how to get their attention. Documentation. But what I needed was something to document. Cue my other valuable skill set, investigation. Part of my old job had been to investigate accidents, chemical spills, defective products, etc., and find out what happened, why it happened, and how to prevent it in the future. In doing this, I learned that the more details you gather, the better. Dates, times, names of witnesses, photos, video, ambient air temperature, tea price in Bangladesh. If it was even remotely relevant, write it down. Best of all, I was really good at it, often finding problems everyone else overlooked. So, the two pieces of a plan began to form. First off, I would need to observe everything Kevin did and said, looking for something I could use to prove just how incompetent he truly was. In addition, every time he got lost or went off route, I would take a picture with my phone of the truck's computer logs showing the GPS pings and their timestamps along with a photo of his daily driver log. Kevin would be under investigation and not even know it. I finish my drive shift and go off duty. Before I go to sleep, I decide to check the computer records to see exactly what Kevin did the night before that got us so very lost. According to the GPS pings, he had, for some reason, turned off the interstate and driven close to 500 miles with over 150 miles going in the opposite direction than we needed to go. I took snapshots of the ping and the Kevin driver logs, showing that he was on duty when it happened. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. I knew I needed more. Much more. So I took an old legal pad and began making a list of everything stupid, dangerous, and dim-witted Kevin had done, included dates and times where I could, and started writing an email. An email that would take a month to complete. To be continued tomorrow. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget this whole thing is basically brought to you by GamerSupps. If you like caffeine, then I can't recommend GamerSupps enough. Use code Oz at checkout to support the channel. And I do actually use this product. It's replaced all other sources of caffeine for me because I feel good. It doesn't have any of that extra stuff that a pre-workout blend might have. It's with a couple of the extra things to make it so you don't crash as hard. It's good. I like it. Personally, if you really want a good flavor, try the Soda Pressing Pear or even the Dragon Fruit Punch. Those two are my personal favorites right now.